humanity sets the agenda.
The time is 12:32 and you're tuned into the mid-morning talk with me, Fazila Isaac on Salam Media. We are now joined by Annemieke Goosen, who's a qualified teacher and a dyslexia therapist. She has more than 15 years of experience in teaching and she works with children of various ages. She's also the owner of Cresside Remedial Center in George, Western Cape. Welcome to the show, Annemieke.
Thank you so much, Fazila.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
No problem.
So, let's start with you. Give us a brief introduction into yourself.
Okay, so I basically taught for 15, or I have experience in teaching for 15 years with kids of various ages. I'm a qualified teacher and dyslexia therapist, and I studied in the Free State and online. I completed my honours in psychology in 2016, and yeah, then I've always been interested in dyslexia, but then I decided to go the therapy route, and I did my dyslexia therapist qualification through Star Griffin Dyslexia Academy.
And what has piqued your interest in getting into dyslexia therapy?
Well, firstly, my heart have always been in helping kids that struggle, and yeah, I've seen the debilitating effect that it had on kids' self-esteem and self-image while I was teaching in different schools and at different ages. So that was the first thing that prompted me. And then the second thing is I love languages, and I was so fascinated to see dyslexic kids because none of them are the same. And even if they both have dyslexia, they're completely different. Um, yeah, and then I decided to do it.
Oh, fantastic. And being in the industry, it's of course it's not easy. It's not an easily identifiable learning disability. So what can dyslexia be defined as? How would you define dyslexia?
Okay, so I think mostly dyslexia is understood to be confined to only letter reversals or struggles with reading, but it actually is a result of a visual thinking style that can be both a blessing and a curse. So it's a specific learning disorder with impairment in reading and includes possible deficits in word reading accuracy, reading rate fluency, and reading comprehension. This is often characterized by poor decoding skills and poor spelling. And sorry. And then that I can maybe just say that the SGDA Star Griffin Dyslexia Academy identifies 7 types of different dyslexia. So they have 3 main types, which
Mhm.
is visual, auditory, and movement. And then out of that, there's 4 more combinations, of which the most severe one contains all 3 of those main dyslexia types.
So are the different types based on the severity of the dyslexia?
It's based on the different type of dyslexia. So you get the visual type, we call it dysaidesia, and then you get children that struggle with auditory type of dyslexia, which they call dysphonesia, and then there's a type that struggles with movement, which they call dysnemkinesia. But then there's different combinations of those 3. So some of the kids would struggle with visual and auditory, some would struggle with visual and movement. And then the most severe one is somebody that has all 3, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yes, yes. And how can someone identify, parents and teachers, how would you be able to identify if a child is dyslexic?
Um, so there are some signs that you can look for. The most important thing is just to remember if you suspect that a child do have dyslexia, to have them tested by a registered and trained therapist. At this stage, SGDA is HPCSA registered, so it's good to maybe find a speech therapist or a occupational therapist or even a psychologist that have maybe done um, the evaluation course to identify these kids. But if there are some small signs that you can look out for, in preschool it would be trouble recognizing letters of the alphabet, struggling to match certain letters to sounds. When they struggle with blending sounds into words, they might struggle with the sequence of um, common word sequences like days of the week or months of the year or even counting. And these kids often have a much smaller vocabulary than other kids of their age. Um, yeah, middle school kids, you'll usually see those are the type of kids that they don't want to read out loud in front of the class. They usually are slow readers and they usually are very anxious while they read and speak. And then they struggle with spelling difficulties, they struggle with new words and technical terms, concentration issues. So it's a whole bunch of things that can maybe show you that there might be something more here than just basic foundational discrepancies.
Okay. And in what ways do students with dyslexia read differently? Well, I know some of them, I've experienced this with some students where they can't differentiate between a D and a B. They both look the opposite of each other. So how do they read differently to someone who does not have dyslexia?
Okay, so the basic thing is they often struggle with word accuracy to pronounce the words properly, with their reading rate fluency, and with their reading comprehension. So they would often read or write with additions or omissions or even substitutions or repetitions and reversals. But usually it's also very slow and inaccurate reading.
Oh, it's so you would say it's reading slowly, reading inaccurately, and not being able to identify certain alphabets. So that would be how they are a little bit different to
Yeah,
students who would
and
read
also
normally.
reading without comprehension, without understanding what they are reading.
Right. And how can you differentiate between a child who's just not putting in the effort and one who is actually dyslexic? Because some kids, the reality is they don't want to do the reading, they don't want to, some of them don't even try to comprehend the work. And then there's those who are genuinely suffering from dyslexia. So, how can you differentiate between the two?
I think if you know the child quite well, you will definitely know when they're trying their best and when not. Um, the big thing is just you will see certain clear signs that this child can really not, is not able to, even though he wants to, because you can't just look at the way that the child reads, you also need to look at the way that he writes. So there are several different aspects that goes along with this, and I think it's also important to also involve other therapists to help you, like occupational therapists, psychologists, to help you decipher whether this child has a problem or he's just not willing to give his best.
Mm, I see. And so when children read, right, and when they're paying attention in class, sometimes it comes to a point where they don't feel smart enough. Because some kids look at it as not just having something that is an issue, but they look at it as, what, I'm dumb, or I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. So how can we actually assist them in not losing confidence and not feeling like, what, I'm not as smart as I think I am? How can we assist them with that?
You see that so many times. I think it's important for teachers and parents to work together in this, especially. And it would be very beneficial for parents to sit down with the child and demystify the learning disorder, because then you can help the child develop tools and resilience that's necessary to manage this both in school and in social circumstances. So some things that you can maybe do is to discuss specific challenges that results from dyslexia, to acknowledge their efforts and celebrate even small victories, to put emphasis on how you're so proud of them for hard work instead of achievements. Um, Another thing is to try and combat any negative self talk. I know that's difficult sometimes with some kids. And then to also help them to recognize their strengths. We call it the superpowers at the SGDA, and these kids usually are very imaginative and holistic. They see the big picture without getting distracted by details. They can easily spot patterns. They have very strong perceptual skills, which actually make them see things from different perspectives. And yeah, I think it's very interesting to also tell them that there are several famous people that reached so many achievements in life, such as Richard Branson, Thomas Edison, Walt Disney, to name a few, which were also dyslexic. Um, yeah, but I think the most important thing is for students to also be honest with themselves and to set realistic goals so that they don't get disappointed every time. But I think the main thing is to build into that child's confidence on different other strengths that the child do have.
I think that that's very, very key, key elements that you've mentioned there, in terms of getting that child to feel better about themselves, letting them understand that as much as they are dyslexic, there are other strengths and, honing in on those particular strengths. I think that is very important, very, very important that you've mentioned that. Annemieke, we're just going to take a quick short break. And when we come back, we'll continue with this. Stay tuned.
Salam Media, a global voice for humanity.
Hunger ratios in South Africa are on an upward trajectory since the beginning of COVID-19. Over 23% of South African households experienced hunger last summer. At SANZAF, we aim to ease the hunger struggles of those in need by providing freshly prepared meals daily. You can be part of this by donating towards the SANZAF Meals Project. Visit sanzaf.org.za or call us on 011 834 6046. SANZAF, changing lives through development and relief.
Online schooling? Why not? Kurtuba Online Academy is the leading global online Islamic school from grade R to matric, offering South African caps and international syllabus. And it doesn't stop there. We also offer online madrasa for every grade. For more information, visit www.kurtubaonline.co.za. Kurtuba Online Academy, the leading global online Islamic school.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
South Africa, are you ready? Penny Appeal South Africa is proud to announce, for the first time in South Africa, For Good Tour featuring Saeed, Rehan Karim, Muad and friends coming to your city in November 2022.
I'm grateful for every single thing you've given me.
Cape Town, 19th of November. Johannesburg, 20th of November. Durban, 26th of November. Get your tickets via Quicket while seats are available. Proceeds in aid of Children of the World Project. Contact 031 1100 573 or email info@pennyappeal.org.za. See you there. For Good Tour, brought to you by Penny Appeal South Africa.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
We're at the tail end of our Tuesday segment of the Mid-Morning Talk. The time is 12:48, and you're tuned into the Mid-Morning Talk with me, Fazila Isaac. We are joined by Annemieke Goosen, who is a dyslexia therapist, who is giving us some insight into this particular learning disability. Now, Annemieke, we spoke about how to get the confidence of children back, how to speak to them and help them to understand that it's not the be all end all having dyslexia, right? So, what information should we share with dyslexic students so that they can understand the concept of intelligence, because not everybody is going to be book smart. Everybody has different types of smart. You have your street smart, you have your creatives. So what information can we share with children in general who are sitting there and, about intelligence?
I think first and foremost, it's important to inform them that your IQ score does not indicate if you're dyslexic or not. Usually, the children with dyslexia have above average IQs, and thus they're very intelligent. I think it's also important to explain that dyslexia is actually a mechanical disability or difference. I prefer the word difference, and not a thinking disability. So this is according to Carl Redford, who done many studies on brain images. And it's important for teachers and parents, and especially the dyslexic learner, to know this so that they can know they are not, that there's not something wrong with them. They are just learning in a different way.
Yeah, I think it is important, and it was so nice to note that most of the prominent figures, like Richard Branson and Walt Disney that you mentioned, they also were dyslexic, yet they have become prominent features. They are success stories. I think these are the things that we need to speak to our children about, to our students about as well, so that they're able to understand that, like you said, the difference, it's a mechanical thing, and it's not something that it has no reflection on how intelligent or unintelligent they are at that point. I did see somewhere that dyslexic are described as visual thinkers. What does this mean?
So basically, you get two types of thinkers. So you get the people that's verbal or sound thinkers, and then you get the non-verbal or picture thinkers. So most people are a combination of both, but dyslexic children are primarily visual or picture thinkers and non-verbal. So they possess very strong perceptual skills, which allows them to perceive things three-dimensionally. So in other words, they make mental pictures of words using their imagination to create a story or to fill in information as they are reading. So to give you an example, when they are reading words with a corresponding picture, such as cat or house, they would create a mental picture for the word, and then they would build on that as they read. But if they have to read a word without a corresponding picture like and or they're unable to recall a picture for this word, and then, or by themselves in any ways, and then often they get dysregulated or disorientated then when reading, and that's where the whole thing falls apart.
Mm, I see. And how can dyslexia be treated? How can we, what methods can we use to improve the reading of someone who is dyslexic?
Um, I think it's also important to tell people that dyslexia is a lifelong condition and that there's no quick fix for it. But a dyslexia diagnosis does not mean that your child will never read or learn to read. Because with the right kind of program or therapy and enough time and intensity, students with dyslexia can learn to read. So, according to Dr. Kruger, a neuropsychologist at the Child Mind Institute, certain programs can help them, and it's programs that include multisensory instruction in decoding skills, repetition and review of skills, intensity of intervention. So not just once a week for remedial, take them more than once a week and repeat all of the important skills. To drill sight words. So these are just a few teaching comprehension strategies to help them. I do think that it's important to find a dyslexia therapist if your child do get diagnosed with dyslexia, and it's also very important to get that diagnosis because and it's even earlier than later, so the earlier the better. um, yeah, so the big thing is that if you don't diagnose this dyslexia properly, then this child will be subjected to labeling, or they might be told that you're just lazy or you don't want to work. And meanwhile, this child really has a disability and is really struggling. And then to also get the right diagnosis, because that's going to influence the type of dyslexia therapy that they receive according to those seven subtypes. Yeah, the combination types. Um, yeah, so I think once again, for the teachers and the parents to work together, for other therapists, because this is a multi therapeutic disorder, very important to include other therapists and to do this early so that you can catch it before brain development goes too far or before there's loads of schoolwork that this child have to work through, but also before this might injure this child's self esteem or self image, so that you can really equip these children because they struggle a lot in school.
I think it's so important for us to learn these things so that we are able to make sure that these kids don't feel so down, so forlorn, and feel like there is something wrong with them. I love the fact that there is treatment for this or a way to make things better for them. Um, Annemieke, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and for giving us these insights into such important information, that has to do with our kids and, their growth, their development, because it's so important to know these things. It's important to know how to deal with such situations. I know a few people who actually, there's a stigma attached to a child who's different intellectually, and it's so important that we move away from that so that we don't let that child lose hope and not feel like something is wrong with them, because there is nothing wrong with them. It's just like you said, a mechanical issue, and we need to find ways in order to deal with this. So I thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Fazila, for the opportunity to share my knowledge. And I really hope that this will help other people to identify kids earlier and to really help these struggling learners. But thank you so much for the
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Absolutely. Have a great day, Anamika.
Thank you, you too.
That was dyslexia therapist Annemieke Goosen joining me on air speaking about this particular learning difference. And the time is 12:56. We're at the end of our show. Absolutely lovely having all our guests and being here to host the show with you. I'm going to love and leave you, inshallah, joining you tomorrow again for our Wednesday edition of the Mid Morning Talk. Stay tuned. And I see the WhatsApp is back. So I guess South Africa is back online enjoying it. It was crazy this morning. People came on and people were like, what is going on? Switching the Wi Fi on and off. It's crazy how much we rely on social media, but it's back on. So I'm guessing you're going to have a brilliant rest of the day. Until tomorrow, from me, Fazila Isaac, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.